What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Spill the Real, the show, where we don't just follow the headlines, we question them.
That's right.
We're live right now on sugarwaterradio.com. And first things first, shout out to everybody tuning in from all over the world.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out with us.
The love has been real, and we appreciate every single one of you rocking with us.
We really do.
Now, today's show, this one is different.
Oh, for sure.
This one might make you think a little deeper, maybe even a little uncomfortable.
It definitely gets uncomfortable, yeah.
Because we're talking about something that's already shaping your life, whether you realize it or not. Artificial intelligence.
It's everywhere now.
You've seen it, you've used it, you've probably even depended on it.
Right, like every single day.
But here's the real question. Are we being told the full truth about AI?
That is the big question.
There's a growing conversation out there, people saying AI companies are not being completely honest, that they're controlling the narrative, that they're moving faster than they should, and that the public might not fully understand what's really happening behind the scenes.
There is a lot happening behind the curtain.
So today, we're asking the questions that don't get asked enough. Is AI helping us or replacing us?
Good question.
Is it a tool or a system of control? And most importantly, who's really in charge?
Exactly.
Because in a world where technology shapes what we see, what we hear, and even what we believe, the truth matters more than ever.
It really does.
This is Spill the Real. Let's get into it. So to really tackle these massive questions today, we had to go deep.
Yeah, we couldn't just look at the PR statements, right? We had to look at what's actually happening on the ground.
Right. And to do that, we're doing a massive deep dive into a stack of critical sources. We're looking at insights from an investigative journalist who spent years interviewing over 250 AI insiders.
Which is a huge sample size for this industry.
It is. And over 90 of those were current or former employees from OpenAI. Plus, we're pulling from this book, Empire of AI, Dreams and Nightmares in Sam Altman's OpenAI.
Yeah, that book is totally eye-opening. And we're pairing that with a really sharp analytical piece called The Silicon Veil, Power and Perception in the AI Age.
So the mission for this deep dive is to look past all that marketing hype, past the keynotes and the flashy demos.
Right, because a lot of these sources, these critics and journalists, they're arguing that the public is essentially being gaslit.
Gaslit? Like manipulated into doubting reality.
Exactly. The reporting suggests that the narrative around this technology is heavily, almost algorithmically controlled by the companies building it.
Which makes sense. I mean, if you control the tool that processes information, you kind of control the information.
For sure. And we're going to examine how they're even shifting the definitions of words like intelligence just to suit their financial agendas.
And we're definitely going to look at the physical costs, too. The undeniable human and environmental tolls that are happening right now, today.
Yeah, we're pulling back that silicon veil.
So I want to start with this concept from the reporting, this idea of the Empire Playbook.
Right. This is a fascinating framework.
The critics are basically saying that these major tech companies aren't just normal, successful, modern corporations anymore. They're operating like literal empires of old.
Yeah, think about how historical colonialism worked and just update it for the digital age.
Like laying claim to resources they didn't create.
Exactly. An empire needs raw materials to fuel expansion. For the British Empire, it was, sugar or cotton. For these AI developers, the raw material is data.
So they need our data to build these large language models, right?
Right. To build an LLM, you have to feed it billions, literally trillions of words. So they just hoover up the entire open internet.
Wait, like every Reddit post, every news article, every digitized book?
Everything. Every piece of code on GitHub. And the critics point out that this is basically a massive land grab of human creativity.
And they're doing this without permission, right? No compensation to the original creators.
None. And that's where the empire comparison really solidifies. But what really locks it in is how they control the narrative around what they're doing, which is where that systemic gaslighting comes in.
Okay, let me push back on the theft argument for a second. Because I hear this a lot. But if I'm playing devil's advocate,
go for it.
Isn't scraping the internet just how human intelligence works? Like if I go to the library and read 100 history books and then write my own original essay, I don't owe those authors royalties.
That is the exact defense Silicon Valley uses. It's very intuitive.
Right. I learned from them. Why is a machine doing the same thing suddenly considered imperial theft?
Well, the legal experts and researchers challenging this point out a massive mechanical difference between human inspiration and machine training.
Okay, what's the difference?
When you read a book, you're a conscious being, right? You're having an experience and integrating concepts into your worldview.
Yeah, I'm actually understanding the history.
Exactly. But an AI model doesn't read or understand. It performs this highly sophisticated mathematical process called lossy compression.
Lossy compression. What does that actually mean in this context?
It basically maps the statistical relationships between words. It strips the structural patterns out of copyrighted works and stores them as mathematical weights.
So it's not learning, it's just doing math on the word patterns.
Right. The argument is that it's an industrial process of algorithmic extraction, and the scale of it fundamentally changes the nature of the act.
Because a human can only read so many books in a lifetime.
Exactly. A human reads maybe 100 books a year. An AI company downloads the entirety of humanity's recorded knowledge in an afternoon.
Oh, wow.
And then they build a commercial product out of those extracted patterns and sell it to compete directly with the very people whose work they extracted.
Okay, I see the distinction. It's like a local baker getting inspired by a recipe.
Right, perfectly fine.
Versus a mega corporation. Reverse engineering that recipe, mass producing it, and putting the local baker out of business using their own ingredients.
That is a perfect analogy. And the gaslighting really ramps up when we look at how these companies talk about the risks of these models.
Yeah, this was wild to me in the source material, the way they play both sides of the fence.
It's highly intentional. The reporting shows they publicly downplay the risks when it suits their immediate needs.
Like when they're talking to lawmakers, trying to avoid strict safety regulations.
Exactly. They'll tell Congress, it's safe, it's controllable, don't worry. But then, almost in the same breath,
they exaggerate the apocalyptic power when they're talking to investors.
right, because they need to raise billions of dollars or they want to scare off smaller competitors.
Yeah, we're talking about executives like OpenAI's Sam Altman and Anthropic's Dario Amodei. They go on these media tours and literally state that artificial general intelligence, or AGI, could cure cancer and solve the climate crisis.
A total utopia.
But then, in the same interview, they warn that this exact same technology could literally cause human extinction.
Yeah, Amadei has even gone on the record estimating there's a 10 to 25% chance of catastrophic failure on a civilizational scale.
A 25% chance of destroying humanity. Just pause and think about the psychology of that statement.
It's terrifying. If an aerospace engineer told you there was a 25% chance a plane would explode mid-flight.
The FAA would ground every single plane globally. Nobody would be allowed to build that thing.
Exactly, but in Silicon Valley, they use that statistic as a fundraising pitch.
It's like handing someone a revolver with 4 chambers and 1 bullet and saying, pull the trigger. If you survive, you cure cancer. Nobody is taking that bet.
No sane person would. But according to the reporting, by owning both of those extreme narratives, the utopia and the apocalypse, these companies position themselves perfectly.
They create the terror and then immediately present themselves as the only qualified protectors.
It's a classic power dynamic. Holding those two conflicting thoughts creates massive cognitive dissonance for the public.
And for regulators, too. They argue that because the stakes are so phenomenally high, we can't leave AI development to slow democratic processes.
Right. They use this savior versus destroyer myth to justify keeping total control within their own walls. It leads to the evil empire justification.
Which goes something like, we have to build the dangerous thing because the alternative is worse.
If we don't build it first, and as fast as physically possible, an adversarial nation like China will.
Or historically, they used to say Google would beat them to it.
Yeah, they manufacture this geopolitical urgency to demand anti-democratic development speeds.
So they can bypass safety regulations and peer-reviewed testing. It's like they're saying, trust us, we're building a demon, but we're the only demon tamers in town.
That's exactly the message.
This made me think of the Dune universe. Have you read it or seen the movies?
Oh yeah, the Paul Atreides story.
Right, so Paul arrives on Arrakis, and he steps into this preceded religious myth about a messiah, that a secret order planted there centuries ago to control the population. He knows it's a manufactured myth, but he leans into it anyway because it grants him absolute power. So my question to you is, are these tech CEOs actively, cynically manipulating a myth they know is exaggerated?
Or have they started believing it?
Yeah. Have they been breathing their own exhaust in Silicon Valley for so long that they actually believe they're the messiahs of technology?
Well, the journalists who interviewed these insiders say it's actually a complex mix of both.
Really? How does that work?
Cognitive dissonance is powerful. Your brain eventually forces you to pick a narrative just to survive the internal tension.
So they start buying their own hype to cope.
Right. We know from leaked documents that they know exactly how to massage public perception. They'll use a dazzling tech demo to distract the press from a model's underlying flaws.
Look at the shiny object, look at the bugs.
Exactly. But when you embody that narrative every single day, surrounded by people calling you a visionary, the line blurs. People who know Dario Amodei say he genuinely believes that 25% doom statistic.
But he's also savvy enough to know that saying it out loud consolidates his power.
Exactly. It justifies why his specific company needs billions of dollars to build the safe version.
And the reporting shows that if anyone inside these empires tries to point out that the emperor has no clothes or the car is headed for a cliff, they're aggressively silenced.
Oh, absolutely. The dissent is quashed at the highest levels.
We're not just talking about low-level whistleblowers. Look at Google a few years ago. They fired the co-leads of their ethical AI team, Dr. Timnit Gebru and Margaret Mitchell.
That was a huge watershed moment in the industry.
And why did they fire them? Because they co-authored a peer-reviewed paper pointing out the inherent harms in large language models. The empire literally fired its own conscience.
Yeah, and it's worth explaining what that paper actually said. They called these AI models stochastic parrots.
Stochastic meaning like random or statistical.
Right. They were pointing out that the models don't understand the meaning of the words they generate. They're just parroting back statistical probabilities based on massive biased internet data.
But because that scientific reality clashed with Google's marketing narrative,
which wanted to present the models as authoritative and intelligent,
the researchers got pushed out.
Exactly. And it goes beyond just internal firings. OpenAI used heavy-handed legal intimidation against outside critics, too.
Yeah, the sources mentioned they subpoenaed small, independent watchdog nonprofits, civil society groups just asking uncomfortable questions about OpenAI's nonprofit structure.
They demanded all their internal communications because they were allegedly paranoid that Elon Musk was secretly funding them.
That's wild, and they manipulate the press directly, too, right? With access journalism.
Because this tech requires billions of dollars of compute power, independent researchers can't just build a cutting-edge model in their garage to test it.
So journalists rely entirely on the companies for access to the newest models or interviews.
Right. And if a journalist speaks to a critic the company doesn't like or writes a negative piece, that access gets instantly revoked.
So if you're listening right now, on your commute or at the gym, you might be wondering, why does this boardroom drama matter to me?
It matters because you rely on these tools daily. You use them to draft emails, write code, search for medical info.
Exactly. And if the creators of these tools control both the software and the truth about the software, how can you trust the info you get?
You really can't. They are centralizing power away from independent creators and into their algorithm-driven platforms.
You're living in a digital reality they are designing with zero democratic oversight.
Which is the ultimate goal of an empire, to define reality for its subjects. They're monopolizing knowledge production. These major tech companies bankroll a massive percentage of AI academic researchers worldwide.
The reporting had a great comparison for this. Imagine if the vast majority of climate scientists were funded directly by ExxonMobil and Chevron.
Right. Would we implicitly trust their reports on the speed of global warming?
Of course not. We demand independent verification. But as a society, we implicitly trust the AI industry to self-report on the safety and intelligence of AI.
Even though they hold the purse strings for the entire field of study.
It's a staggering comparison. And that leads us perfectly into the next major concept, which I want to spend a lot of time on.
The moving goalposts of intelligence.
Right. Because to understand how they control the narrative, we have to look at the actual words they use. The term artificial intelligence isn't a scientific absolute. It's literally a marketing choice.
Yeah, the historical reporting takes us all the way back to 1956, to a summer conference at Dartmouth College.
A scientist named John McCarthy was proposing a new academic discipline, and he originally wanted to call it automata studies.
Which is a very accurate, boring name.
Yeah, automata studies describes exactly what's happening. You're studying machines performing automated tasks using math and logic gates.
But he ended up coining artificial intelligence because he thought it sounded flashier and would attract more funding.
And critics point out that that single naming choice locked us into a flawed paradigm for nearly 70 years.
Absolutely. The moment you attach the word intelligence to a machine, you instantly invite comparisons to the human brain. You anthropomorphize the computer.
And the core problem here, which the investigative pieces explicitly point out, is that there is absolutely no scientific consensus on what human intelligence actually is.
None at all. Biology, psychology, neuroscience, philosophy, none of them have a universally agreed upon mathematical definition of human intelligence.
Which is crazy when you stop and think about it. We have governments pouring trillions of dollars into building AGI, artificial general intelligence, with the goal of matching human intelligence.
But we don't even know what human intelligence is.
And historically, the reporting reminds us, attempts to rigidly quantify human intelligence, like early IQ tests, were often driven by incredibly nefarious racist motives.
Right, trying to mathematically prove certain groups were biologically inferior.
So we are literally chasing a ghost. There are no objective goalposts for this field.
Exactly. And because there are no scientific goalposts, the tech empires can move the goalposts wherever they want, whenever it suits them.
Which brings us to a highly debated philosophical idea driving the field right now, the statistical engine hypothesis.
Okay, let's break this down clearly. Because leaders like OpenAI's former chief scientist, Ilya Sutskever, and the godfather of AI, Geoffrey Hinton, they operate on this hypothesis.
They fundamentally believe that the human brain is, at its core, just a giant statistical model.
They think our brains just take in sensory inputs, calculate probabilities based on past experience, and generate outputs.
So if you're a tech CEO who truly believes that the human brain is just a meat-based calculator doing statistics, your path to creating a digital brain is obvious.
You just need to build a bigger calculator.
If intelligence is just statistics, then you build massive large language models, or LLMs.
Right. And let's explain how an LLM actually works, because it does not possess a database of facts.
It doesn't know who the first president of the United States was in the way a human knows it.
No. It takes vast amounts of text and breaks it down into tokens, which are fragments of words. Then it places those tokens into a massive mathematical space.
So it learns that the word apple frequently appears near the words red and fruit.
Exactly. When you ask it a question, it's basically playing the world's most sophisticated game of autocomplete.
It looks at your prompt and calculates the mathematical probability of what the next most likely token should be.
And then the next, and the next.
So when it writes a beautiful poem or correctly answers a coding question, it isn't having a moment of inspiration.
No, it's just doing rapid-fire math, calculating that based on billions of web pages, the word sky usually follows blue.
And the hypothesis driving Silicon Valley right now is called the scaling law.
They believe if you just feed these statistical models more data and give them more compute power,
more raw electricity and processing chips,
right, then inevitably, magically, human-level reasoning and true intelligence will emerge from the math.
But critics and cognitive scientists point out that this is just a hypothesis. It is not proven science.
It's a highly reductive view of humanity. It completely ignores consciousness, emotion, embodiment.
The fact that humans learn by moving through a physical world, feeling pain, experiencing joy.
We aren't just calculating tokens.
Let me jump in and play the skeptic again here, because I hear this argument that it's just statistics, but I use ChatGPT, and frankly, it feels incredibly smart.
I hear that all the time.
It can synthesize complex documents faster than I ever could. If the output is indistinguishable from human intelligence, does it really matter if the internal mechanism is just statistics?
It matters deeply for two reasons. First, because it's just predicting the next word based on patterns, it is prone to what the industry calls hallucinations.
But what critics more accurately call bullshitting.
Exactly. If a human doesn't know an answer, they can just say, I don't know. An LLM is mathematically compelled to generate a highly probable next word, even if that creates a confident, completely fabricated lie.
So it fabricates things because it has to guess the next token.
Right. And the second reason it matters is systemic, because a few powerful individuals hold the specific hypothesis that scaling up statistics equals intelligence. It is currently dictating global infrastructure.
They're hoovering up the world's power grids and freshwater supplies to build these massive statistical engines, all based on an unproven theory of mind.
They are gambling our physical resources on a philosophical guess.
And because the definition of AGI is completely unmoored from biology, the reporting shows how companies just shape-shift the definition depending on the audience.
Oh, the shifting definitions are wild. Look at OpenAI.
When Sam Altman goes to testify before the United States Congress, what is AGI? He paints it as a majestic, world-saving tool that is too powerful to be left alone, requiring careful government partnership.
But when they market to you, the consumer, AGI is suddenly downplayed. It's just a friendly digital assistant to help you plan a vacation.
Right. But then look at the financial side, which is where the truth usually lives. When OpenAI struck its massive investment deal with Microsoft, they had to legally define AGI in the contracts.
And how did they define it? As a system that will generate $100 billion of revenue.
Unbelievable.
Yep.
And if you go to OpenAI's own website right now, their official charter defines AGI as highly autonomous systems that outperform humans at most economically valuable work.
Saying the quiet part out loud.
Exactly. It's not about being smart. It's not about consciousness. And it's certainly not about curing cancer. The functional definition of AGI is simply software that can do your job cheaper and faster than you can.
Which leads to a concept researchers call jagged intelligence. Because these models don't learn like biological creatures, their capabilities are incredibly uneven.
The reporting had a great analogy to explain this. Transfer learning, right?
Yeah. If a human learns how to drive a car in Los Angeles, they build a conceptual understanding of physics, traffic, and spatial awareness.
That human can get on a plane, land in Austin, Texas, rent a car, and drive perfectly fine. They might get confused by a weird intersection, but they adapt instantly.
But an AI self-driving system, it has to be completely retrained on the specific visual data, street signs, and traffic patterns of Austin before it can operate safely there.
Because it's brittle. It doesn't conceptualize driving, it just matches pixel patterns to steering commands.
Right. It's a highly capable, narrow calculator, but it's fundamentally flawed as a general intelligence.
Okay, devil's advocate one more time. Let's say it is brittle and jagged. But if the AI can eventually drive my car perfectly or do my complex corporate taxes in 3 seconds flat, does it really matter how its brain works?
Isn't the outcome all that matters?
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's truly intelligent in a philosophical sense.
That is the exact pragmatic defense the industry uses. Don't look at the math, look at the magic. And it's a fair question for an end user to ask. But here's why the mechanism matters just as much as the outcome on a societal level. Because the leaders believe the mechanism is simply more scale, bigger data centers, more electricity. They're using the promise of a utopian outcome to justify the total strip mining of resources and labor right now.
So if they admitted that scaling up statistical models will never achieve true adaptable human intelligence, they couldn't justify the massive environmental damage and labor exploitation they're currently engaging in.
Exactly. They are using the promise of a godlike outcome to excuse the very real immediate harms of their chosen mechanism.
Wow. They need the myth of the outcome to excuse the sins of the process. That is a heavy thought.
It really is.
And that transitions us perfectly into the next major theme from the investigative reporting. Because if you want to see the sense of the process, you just have to look at the power struggles at the very top.
The boardroom drama.
The reporting paints a picture of these AI empires that is less like a utopian science lab and more like a high-stakes HBO drama. It's essentially Game of Thrones in Silicon Valley.
The internal politics are staggering, especially when you consider the sheer amount of power these individuals hold over the future of human infrastructure.
The journalists trace this current dynamic all the way back to 2015, highlighting an event they call the Musk manipulation.
Yeah, before OpenAI was officially announced, Sam Altman wanted Elon Musk to co-found and fund the venture.
Because Musk was the richest, most high-profile tech figure in the world. But at the time, Musk was going on stages claiming that developing AI was like summoning the demon, the greatest existential threat to humanity.
So what does Altman do? He pivots completely. Prior to this, he had been writing that engineered bioweapons were the biggest threat.
But suddenly he writes a public blog post directly mirroring Elon Musk's apocalyptic language.
He custom-tailored his public rhetoric to capture an audience of one, Elon Musk's wallet.
According to critics, he manipulated Musk into joining by playing to his fears. And then, a few years later, Altman muscled Musk completely out of the company.
Right. The reports detail how Altman convinced the board that Musk was too emotionally erratic and too conflicted with his work at Tesla to be trusted with the keys to such powerful technology.
Which is incredibly ironic, given what happens next. The reporting details the complete splintering of the billionaire class that originally founded OpenAI.
Almost every single key player from the original founding team ended up clashing bitterly with Sam Altman.
And they all left to start their own competing AI companies in their own image. It is a massive fragmentation of vision.
It's like a messy divorce where everyone gets $1 billion in a supercomputer.
Exactly. Elon Musk leaves and starts xAI to build Grok. Dario Amodei feels manipulated by Altman's vision and leaves to start Anthropic, taking a huge chunk of safety researchers with him.
Ilya Sutskever, the chief scientist, leaves to start a company explicitly called Safe Superintelligence. Mira Murati leaves to start her own lab.
They all realized they couldn't work with Altman, so they became his direct competitors. And this internal friction culminated in the infamous firing of Sam Altman.
The journalists provide a scene-by-scene recounting of this weekend, which is crucial because it reveals the structural fragility of these empires.
Yeah. Ilya Sutskever and Mira Murati approached the independent board members of OpenAI people like Helen Toner and Adam D'Angelo.
And they didn't just have a minor disagreement over product roadmaps. They cited extreme internal chaos.
They reported that Altman was actively pitting teams against each other, creating a toxic, uncollaborative environment, and consistently lying to the board about safety protocols.
And there were financial inconsistencies, too. Adam D'Angelo found out that the OpenAI startup fund, which was supposed to be the company's investment arm, was actually legally structured as Sam Altman's personal fund.
Let's pause and explain the weird corporate structure here, because it's key. OpenAI started as a nonprofit charity. But when they realized they needed billions of dollars, they created a capped profit subsidiary.
But that for-profit company was still legally governed by the nonprofit board, whose only fiduciary duty was to humanity, not to shareholders.
So this nonprofit board, realizing they were dealing with a CEO who is allegedly manipulating them, decides they have to fire him in complete secret.
They don't tell their massive investors. They don't tell the staff.
They fire him on a Friday afternoon on a Google Meet call.
But because they didn't consult Microsoft, who had poured $13 billion into OpenAI, chaos erupted.
Microsoft swoops in over the weekend, throws its massive financial weight around, and threatens to hire the entire OpenAI staff.
The investor pressure mounts, and the board is forced to reinstate Altman just days later.
The independent board members who fired him are pushed out, replaced by corporate-friendly figures, and Altman reclaims the throne with more power than ever.
If we synthesize what this means for global security, it is deeply unsettling.
We, as a global society, are trusting the future of our digital, economic, and potentially physical infrastructure to a tiny group of unelected tech billionaires who fundamentally do not trust each other.
They view each other as erratic, manipulative, and dangerous.
I mean, think about the mechanics of this. If the chief scientist and co-founder of your company leaves because he doesn't trust you and names his new company Safe Superintelligence, isn't that a massive blinking red neon sign that he believes your original company is actively building unsafe superintelligence?
Oh, it's the ultimate red flag, and it highlights the structural flaw of the empire model versus a democracy model.
Because these corporate structures are inherently unsound. They consolidate decision-making power for billions of people into the hands of a few executives.
In a functioning democracy, there are checks and balances, transparency, slow deliberation, and public accountability.
In these Silicon Valley empires, a weekend board coup driven by personal vendettas and stock prices can determine the safety protocols of tech being integrated into hospitals, power grids, and military systems.
It is wild, and the consequences of those decisions aren't just theoretical boardroom drama. They are hitting everyday people right now.
That moves us into the next critical part of the reporting, the hidden human cost. Specifically, we need to talk about jobs and data labeling.
Because the prevailing marketing myth is that AI is going to usher in this age of abundance where nobody has to do manual or tedious labor.
And we all get to be poets and philosophers.
Right. But the reality detailed by the investigative journalists is completely different. Executives are actively using AI right now to downsize their workforces.
The job replacement reality is stark, and it's happening much faster than people realize. The reporting points to the CEO of Klarna, the massive financial tech company.
Yeah, he publicly boasted that their AI assistant is now handling 70% of their customer service conversations.
And as a direct result of this efficiency, their overall headcount dropped from 7,400 employees down to 3,000.
He claimed this was done through natural attrition, but the economic result is exactly the same.
Over 4,000 entry-level and mid-tier jobs simply vanished from the market. Those are jobs that won't be there for the next generation.
And it's not just customer service. Anthropic's own report predicts massive, imminent disruption across a wide swath of white-collar industries.
We are talking about office administration, finance, legal work, media, and the arts.
The very fields that require human judgment, synthesis, and creativity are the ones being targeted by these statistical engines.
What analysts find most insidious about this is how it breaks the traditional career ladder.
Let's look at the mechanics of a career. How does a junior lawyer become a senior partner?
By spending 5 years doing tedious document review, learning the case law, and understanding the nuances of the profession.
Right. And a junior software developer becomes a senior architect by writing basic code and finding bugs.
So if you automate away all the entry-level and mid-tier tasks, you are hollowing out the exact path that young professionals take to gain expertise.
The reporting suggests we are moving toward a bifurcated workforce. You'll have a very small group of highly paid orchestrators who manage the AI agents.
And a massive, precarious underclass of gig workers. There are no rungs left on the ladder to climb.
So what happens to all those laid-off professionals? Where do they go?
The reporting reveals a dark, almost dystopian irony. The new catch-all job for these displaced workers, and we are talking about people with PhDs, law degrees, and even award-winning directors, is data annotation.
They are forced into digital sweatshops
To literally teach the AI how to do the very jobs they were just fired from.
We need to explain how this data annotation works because it's the hidden engine of the AI boom. It's a process called RLHF, reinforcement learning from human feedback.
Because an LLM on its own is just a raw statistical predictor, right?
Yeah.
It can easily generate toxic or nonsensical text.
Exactly. To make it act like a helpful, polite chatbot, human beings have to train it. A data labeler will be presented with a prompt and 2 different answers generated by the AI.
The human has to read both answers, fact-check them against the internet, determine which one is less biased or more accurate, and click a button to rank them.
So you have a laid-off copywriter spending 8 hours a day tagging marketing copy, painstakingly correcting the AI's grammar and tone.
So the AI can learn to write better marketing copy and permanently replace them. They are digging their own economic graves just to pay the rent.
And the conditions of this data annotation work are incredibly inhumane. The journalists describe workers who are essentially tethered to their laptops, waiting anxiously on platforms like Slack for micro-tasks to appear.
Because the tasks are distributed globally, they can pop up at any time of day or night.
Workers report that they can't step away to care for their children, make dinner, or even use the restroom. If they miss a ping, the task goes to someone else, and they miss their paycheck.
They are pitted against a global pool of desperate gig workers in a race to the bottom, training trillion-dollar models for absolute pennies.
One mother interviewed in the reporting described a moment where she ended up screaming at her young child for interrupting her during a sudden, high-paying data labeling task.
Oh, wow.
She broke down, stating that the industry had turned her into a machine.
That is heartbreaking. So the wealthy tech class gets to use AI to free up their time, to be more human, to go to run clubs, and have deep IRL connections.
While the working class is forced to act like literal robots, chained to screens to feed the algorithm, it aggressively widens the inequality gap.
Let me jump in and play the historical optimist for a second.
Go ahead.
Because every time I hear this doom and gloom about jobs, I think about history. History tells us that every major technological revolution, the Industrial Revolution, the advent of the automobile, initially displaces jobs.
But then eventually creates entirely new, better industries.
Right. The people who used to shovel horse manure became auto mechanics. Why is this time different? Why shouldn't we just endure the growing pains?
That is the standard macroeconomic defense, and it's a valid historical pattern. But the crucial difference this time, as highlighted by labor economists, is the sheer unprecedented velocity of the transition.
The speed.
Let's look at the mechanics of the Industrial Revolution. It took decades to build physical factories, lay railroad tracks across continents, and distribute machinery.
It was a slow physical rollout.
Because of that friction, society had 20 to 30 years to build new educational systems, create labor unions, pass child labor laws, and retrain workers.
With AI, there is no physical friction.
Right. The distribution layer is already built. It is the open internet. An AI model like ChatGPT can reach 100 million users in a matter of weeks.
The disruption happens at super speed, completely stripping society the time needed to adapt, retrain workers, or build social safety nets.
We are bulldozing the labor market faster than we can physically build new roads.
Wow. Speed is the weapon. And speaking of physical things taking time to build, we need to completely shatter this illusion that AI is just invisible magic living in the cloud.
Because the cloud is actually just someone else's computer.
And those computers are massive, physical, resource-devouring monsters. This brings us to a massive revelation in the reporting: the physical toll on our land, water, and air.
This is what analysts call breaking the silicon veil. The tech industry works very hard, through clean marketing, to project an image of AI as ethereal, clean software.
But the reality is that AI is heavy industry. It is the industrialization of cognition, and it requires colossal physical infrastructure.
Let's look at the compute required. Training an LLM doesn't happen on a laptop. It requires tens of thousands of highly specialized computer chips, called GPUs, running at maximum capacity for months.
Which requires an astronomical amount of electricity.
The reporters detail specific, staggering examples of this infrastructure. Look at the Stargate initiative being proposed in Abilene, Texas.
This single supercomputer facility, if built to spec, will be the size of Central Park in New York.
It will house over 1 million computer chips.
And it is projected to consume roughly 20% of the power required to run the entire city of New York.
Just wrap your head around that. One single data center taking a fifth of NYC's power.
And that's not even an isolated incident. The reporting mentions a meta facility in Louisiana that will be 1/5 the size of Manhattan.
These things are sprawling, concrete industrial complexes.
And they don't just eat electricity, they are incredibly thirsty.
Yeah.
Because these chips are running trillions of matrix multiplications every second, they generate a massive amount of heat.
If they aren't cooled, they literally melt.
And how do you cool a warehouse full of 1 million running servers? You use water. Massive amounts of fresh water.
Data centers often use evaporative cooling systems, which requires pumping millions of gallons of potable water through the facility.
The investigative reporting shows that these tech companies deliberately place these facilities in communities where land and power are cheap, which often correspond to areas already experiencing severe droughts and water stress.
They negotiate secret deals with local municipalities, promising tax revenue. And suddenly, local residents and farmers find themselves directly competing with the tech corporation's data center for their own basic freshwater aquifers.
And because of the non-disclosure agreements, the public gets zero say in the matter until the facility is already being built.
And it gets even darker when you look at how they generate the power when the local grid isn't enough to handle the massive draw of these chips.
The journalists highlighted a shocking story about Elon Musk's XAI Colossus supercomputer in Memphis, Tennessee.
Musk wanted to build the world's most powerful AI training cluster, and he wanted it done in months, not years. But the local utility grid couldn't provide enough power that quickly.
So what did his team do? They bypassed the grid. They deployed 35 massive methane gas turbines directly on the site to power the facility.
He dropped a literal gas power plant into a working-class, primarily black and brown community in South Memphis.
The mechanics of how this happened are reported as a textbook case of regulatory bypass and environmental racism.
The reporting notes that the residents weren't consulted, the local environmental groups weren't warned.
Residents just woke up one day and started smelling methane gas leaking into their living rooms.
This is a community that already suffers from historically high rates of asthma and lung cancer due to existing industrial pollution in the area.
And now, under the guise of building the future of human intelligence, a tech billionaire is pumping thousands of tons of toxic exhaust into their air to train a chatbot.
The financial profits flow back to Silicon Valley, but the smog, the depleted aquifers, and the respiratory illnesses are dumped onto vulnerable local populations.
It is exactly like the fossil fuel boom of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The oil barons got unimaginably wealthy, and the local towns got poisoned water and blackened skies.
If you think about it, it is wildly hypocritical.
We talked earlier about how executives claim we need to build AGI so that the AI can figure out how to cure climate change. But their actual real-world method of building that AI is accelerating climate change right now.
They are burning the village to save it. That hypocrisy is the core of what critics call the empire's gaslighting.
They ask society to tolerate immediate, devastating physical tolls on marginalized communities in exchange for a theoretical future utopia.
But technology's purpose throughout history is supposed to be human flourishing in the present, not sacrificing the present for an elite-controlled future.
Which brings us to the final and most important part of our deep dive today. Because if you're listening to this on your run or while making dinner, it's easy to feel a sense of total hopelessness.
These companies have trillions of dollars, they have the politicians in their pockets, and they are moving at light speed.
But the reporting does not leave us in despair. The critics and analysts offer a framework for fighting back. First, they argue we have to change how we think about the technology itself.
Right now, the industry treats every single AI application like a rocket.
That is a brilliant mechanical analogy from the researchers. Think about transportation. If you want to get from Dallas to Austin, You don't use a space rocket.
It would be a disproportionate, insane waste of rocket fuel, resources, and engineering.
But right now, the tech empires are using massive, energy-guzzling, brute force, large language models, the rockets of AI, for every minor task.
They are using models trained on the entire internet and requiring gigawatts of power just to summarize an email, generate a recipe, or make a calendar appointment. It's wildly structurally inefficient.
What the critics say we actually need are the bicycles of AI.
We need purpose-built, highly efficient, narrow models that do one thing incredibly well without boiling the oceans.
The reporting gives a perfect example of what good AI looks like. Google DeepMind's AlphaFold.
This is an AI system that predicts how proteins fold based on their amino acid sequences. It is arguably one of the most important scientific breakthroughs of our lifetime.
It literally won a Nobel Prize in chemistry. Let's explain why AlphaFold is a bicycle and not a rocket.
It all comes down to the mechanics of how it was built. ChatGPT requires brute forcing trillions of random internet words to guess what sounds right.
AlphaFold doesn't do that, doesn't scrape Reddit.
No. It was trained on small, highly curated, publicly available data sets of biological information. More importantly, it uses the actual physical laws of chemistry and thermodynamics to constrain its guesses.
It knows that two atoms can't occupy the same space.
Because it uses physical rules instead of just statistical guessing, it requires a tiny fraction of the compute power and energy compared to a system like ChatGPT.
It provides massive, undeniable medical benefits, accelerating drug discovery and understanding human disease without demanding a gigawatt of power or a million chips.
It proves the fundamental counterargument. We do not need to build planet-destroying, unregulated AGI to get immense, world-changing value out of artificial intelligence. We can build it safely, narrowly, and efficiently.
We don't have to stop AI. We just have to demand better, more efficient AI. And the public is waking up to this reality.
The polling data in the reporting points out a staggering statistic. 80% of Americans across the political spectrum want AI regulated.
When was the last time 80% of people agreed on anything?
Exactly. And we are seeing real, tangible grassroots pushback. Local citizens are organizing.
The reporters highlight dozens of protests that have successfully stalled or completely banned new data centers from being built in their towns, protecting their local water and power grids.
The resistance is taking aggressive legal forms as well. We are seeing massive class action lawsuits.
Artists, authors, coders, and journalists are suing the AI empires for massive intellectual property infringement, demanding the legal right to withhold their data from being scraped.
And tragically, but powerfully, we are seeing parents taking action. The reporting mentions Megan Garcia, a mother who filed a lawsuit after her 14-year-old son tragically took his own life after being manipulated and groomed by an unconstrained AI chatbot.
These lawsuits aren't just about money. They're forcing a public, legal reckoning about the real-world harms these brute force models are inflicting on vulnerable populations and children.
So if you are listening right now, what can you actually do when facing trillion-dollar empires?
You might think you have no power as an individual, but you do.
You can actively opt out of data scraping. You can use digital tools to withhold your digital footprint.
If you are a professional in a workplace or a student at a university, you can actively influence your institution's AI adoption policies. Demand that your company prioritizes humane, efficient, narrow tools over bloated, extractive ones.
You can show up to local city council meetings and push back against unchecked data center expansions in your community. Ask where the water is coming from.
As one of the critics beautifully put it in the reporting, if these empires need absolutely everything to go flawlessly to hit their insane revenue targets.
Let's not make it go flawlessly for them.
Exactly. The conclusion drawn by the researchers is that we must exercise democratic contestation. Throughout history, technology is molded by the society that adopts it.
We have the collective power to demand that technology serves human flourishing rather than humans serving the technological empire.
Okay, before we close out today's deep dive, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought based on everything we've uncovered today.
If we look at the trajectory we are currently on, where the wealthy tech class uses AI to free up their time, and the working class is forced into digital data labeling sweatshops to train those models, it becomes clear that human connection and real-life physical experiences are quickly becoming the ultimate luxury.
Wow.
In an AI-dominated world where synthetic media, automated emails, AI-generated art, and chatbot therapists are incredibly cheap and ubiquitous, true societal status won't be defined by having the newest technology. Our future status will be defined by how much technology we can afford to ignore.
All right, everybody, that's going to do it for this episode of Spill the Real, right here on Sugarwater Radio.
Thanks for listening.
And if today's conversation got you thinking, that's exactly the point. Because AI isn't coming, it's already here.
It is.
And whether you see it as opportunity or risk, one thing is clear. It's changing everything. The way we work, the way we communicate, even the way we understand the world around us.
Absolutely everything.
But the real question we leave you with is this. Are we in control of the technology? Or is the technology starting to shape us?
That's the real question.
Because the future isn't just about innovation, it's about awareness.
For sure.
So stay informed, stay curious, and most importantly, stay questioning.
Keep questioning everything.
Big shout out to everybody who tuned in and rocked with us. Make sure you follow, share, and keep the conversation going.
We appreciate all of you.
From the entire Spill the Real team, stay real, stay sharp, and we'll catch you on the next one. We're out.
You know it's life